Or good afternoon or evening, whatever it may be at your end. This is a short video to show you the possibilities of the new central search, which we have developed on the homepage right there, if you can see it here, which is a very flexible tool to search Trismegistos. You no longer need to know exactly where you have to be, whether you have to go to TM places, people, collections, or whatever, because we've experienced that for many users, especially student users, this is a bit of a problem. So there is one central field, and the good news is that you can fill it in as you want, of course. You can search for simple things, such as one specific place name, for instance. I'll type in Oxyrhynchus, and you'll see that the search engine finds Oxyrhynchus as the place in Middle Egypt where not over 9,000 texts have been found. Now, the good news is that you no longer need to know that we in the database use Oxyrhynchos, because as you have seen, I've typed in Oxyrhynchus, but Oxyrhynchos rather works as well. And you can even type it in without the H, Oxyrhynchos, or Oxyrhynchus with a U. And if you use a variant which we don't know, such I think this one is one we don't know, Oxyrhynchus, then if it's a single item, there is a lookup to see whether you haven't made a typo, and that's the case here. You can click any one of these, and then that will bring you to the right place. Especially useful probably for Arabic place names, for which we cannot claim to have all variants, as there are so many. So this also works for the editors. Let's search for Wilken. And he finds the editor of the text, Ulrich Wilken, who in our database is the editor of over 3,000 texts. It also works for dates, so you can search for instance, AD 100 to 150. Let's use the capitals. And then the computer finds the period between 100 and 150, for which we have over 11,000 texts in the database. Now you can combine all of these things. So you can say, I am interested in texts from Oxyrhynchus dating between 100 and 150. And then you find 383 texts. The order in which you write this is irrelevant. So you can also, for instance, type in Oxyrhynchus AD 100 to 150. It's also possible, by the way, to use, if you're not as old-fashioned as I am, CE. So Oxyrhynchus CE 100 and 150, or you can type in 100 to 150 CE. All of these things should be catered for. We can't absolutely guarantee that everything will work, of course, but a lot will work. So if you combine that with Wilken, you'll see that Wilken is the editor of three texts that are dated between 100 and 150 CE. It's also possible, instead of using numbers, to just type in a century, for instance, 2nd century AD. That will be automatically converted to 100 to 199, which we use for historical reasons, but it's no longer that important. You can even say, I'm interested in the early 2nd century. Let's write 2nd full, that also works. Early 2nd century, there's one text from the early 2nd century AD. You can even combine that with reigns of emperors and other rulers, pharaohs. So let's say the reign of Adrian. And the reign of Adrian is automatically converted to the period from 10 August 117 to 10 July 138, for which there are 2 texts from Oxyrhynchus edited by Wilken. Okay, so let's do a couple of searches that are more focused on literary texts. So you could, for instance, search for codices. It's no longer important to write codex. We also cater for the plural codices. So we have in Trismegistos, actually in the LDAB, over 6,200 codices. If your interest is only in codices from the 3rd century AD, of course, you still need to be able to type 3rd century AD, then that is limited. Now, you can say, I'm only interested in those that are preserved in Oxford, because collections is also catered for. Here you can see the interpretation of Oxford as the city in which the text is preserved, and there are 81 texts from the 3rd century AD written on codices that are preserved in Oxford. You can also be more specific and use the fields that are called culture and genre in the LDAB. So you can, for instance, say I'm interested in codices that deal with mathematics, of which there are 45. Now it's also possible to exclude certain elements from your search, and that you need to do by using capitals and write not. So if you write Codex Mathematics not Egypt, the result will be a search for codices with mathematics themes in them that are not, and in this case it's interpreted as the provenance of the text, that are not kept, that are not from Egypt. So in this case there are 4. But of course you may actually be interested in codices with mathematics that are in fact not preserved in Egypt. Then you need to click the plus here for alternatives, and you can see there are alternative interpretations here. So each time the most logical, or rather the most common suggestion is made, because well, it's of course impossible to know what the user wants, so we just look at the frequency of specific terms and use the most frequent one. So in this case, the country in which the text is preserved is what we mean. And if you click that, then you will get a list of mathematics codices not preserved in Egypt, of which there are 43. It's even possible to do more advanced things, such as this one. You can search for mathematics codices kept in Egypt, but not from Egypt, or the other way around. So you write Egypt twice, once with not and once simply like that. Of course, initially, the computer will not understand this search because it will use Egypt twice as provenance of the text. But let's say that for the negative, you pick the country in which it is preserved, and then you'll get 39 texts. So there are 39 codices with mathematics that come from Egypt but are not preserved in Egypt. And obviously this combination of all these different search terms is a step forwards in comparison to some of the previous search facilities that we offered. So authors is also in there. So let's look for codices of Aristotle. You no longer need to know whether it's Aristotle or Aristoteles that we used. In principle, we should have all the variants. In this case, there are 8 codices of Aristotle in the database. So a lot is possible here. We also have the people database in here and the words database. So to start with people, if your interest is, for instance, in Isidorus, then you click and the first thing you get is Isidorus as the author of a literary work, Isidorus of Sevilla, which is in this case not what you're interested in. You want to see attestations of the personal name Isidorus, so you need to click the alternatives and select this one. And then you'll see that we have 1,430 texts in the database that contain the name Isidorus. So Isidorus here has been interpreted as a description of the name Isidoros. Perhaps that is not what you meant. Perhaps you were interested in the variant Isidoros in all possible cases, Isidorum, Isidori, Isidoro in the dative. In that case, you need to click here, click to interpret this as the name variant Isidoros. So then this is reduced to 8 texts. There are 8 texts in the database that contain the name variant Isidorus in the various cases. But perhaps this is not specific enough. Perhaps you were only interested in the nominative of Isidoros, and then you need to click here, and then you'll see that we have 4 texts in the database of the with an attestation of the nominative of Isidorus. Again, here you can combine this. You can write Isidoros Roman period, for instance. We also cater for periods. Roman period is automatically converted to 30 BC to 284 AD. Again, it's of course interpreted first as Isidorus of Sevilla, so you need to change that and you need to select the personal name, of which there are 660 in the Roman period. This can also be combined with editions. So you can say, I want to see attestations of the name Isidoros in Sammelbuch text from the Roman period. Then you just write the abbreviation for Sammelbuch, and there are no attestations of the author, of course. You need to select again the personal name, and you'll see that there are 146 texts edited in Sammelbuch that contain the name Isidoros. In general, let's see whether there are any with the name variant. No, there are none. And finally, you can also do searches for TM words. So if you are like me lazy and you always copy your Greek, copy paste, you can just paste in egrapsen. Now, see, you don't need to worry about diacritic signs. We take those out automatically. So like square brackets or abbreviations. So egrapsen occurs 514 times. Perhaps you are not really interested in that specific form, the third person singular aorist, but your interest is in all forms of grapho, then you can click here and you'll find 7,000 texts in which the verb grapho is used. Again, you can fine-tune this, so you can, for instance, say, I want to see only egrapsen in texts edited by Wilkin. Strange request, of course, but who knows, 30 attestations, or you can say, I'm only interested in texts edited by Wilken that are preserved in Leiden that contain Egrapsen. And you see here that this is the result. The new search always has texts as a result. Text is, of course, the central database in our system in Trismegistos. And for now, it's always texts, but in the future, we will also make the other databases accessible through this central interface, so that you can get, rather than a list of texts with Isidoros, you can get a list of attestations of Isidoros. But that's for the future.